A young witch travels across a magical land. What kind of wonders and horrors will she discover along the way? Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me in this light novel review. I'm Justus Stone, and my channel's all about light novels, reviews like this one, as well as news, and it's also the home of the Light Novel Podcast. So if you love light novels, or maybe you're just starting to get interested in them, make sure you hit subscribe and the bell for all future notifications for my future light novel content. In this video, I'm going to be talking about volume number 1 of Jougi Shiraishi's light novel series, Wandering Witch: The Journeys of Elaina. This one has artwork by Azure. It's released officially in English by Yen On, with a translation by Nicole Wilder. Wandering Witch: The Journeys of Elaina are, well, appropriately enough, about the journey of a witch named Elaina. She's a teenage girl that has become a fully certified witch and who has decided to follow the inspiration of a book series that she loved as a child and to travel and see the world. Now, the novel doesn't have an overarching story to it. The stories are, for the most part, disconnected from each other. However, there are a couple of stories that have recurring characters that do make it feel like there is sort of a sense of linearity to the book, even though the stories, as I said, for the most part, are disconnected from each other. These interconnected stories, you'll know them because they all start with "on the road," are played mostly for laughs. They mostly are absurd. Even if they don't start off absurd, they kind of usually end up kind of absurd. They're totally just for jokes. There's also 2 stories that deal with Elena's backstory, giving us some insight into who she was and how she has come to be the person that she is. I really appreciated those short stories because they went a long way to helping me actually like this character. The other stories, admittedly, are a little bit of a mixed bag. Some of them are phenomenal. Particularly, there is one towards the end about a girl who is alone in a ruined kingdom that really was just a really great story that I could not stop reading. But some of the other ones, there's good and bad. I wouldn't even say bad. It's just that some stories are better than others. The tone of this book sometimes can be a little weird because Elaina herself is this very snarky, at times really judgmental character. And her tone of voice often feels like it goes a long way to actually make her feel more disconnected from what's going on than just the fact that she is traveling as an observer. At first, I kind of found that a little bit disconcerting because it wasn't even just that there was the conflict in tone in terms of how my narrator's framing it and what I'm thinking the events actually are, but I think it was also because, having read so many light novels, I wanted there to be a hero. There are wrongs in this world. There are horrors that Elaina comes across. And the natural inclination, I think, of most people who are used to hero-type novels and light novels where it's almost always somebody righting some kind of wrong, the natural inclination was to want Elaina to fix things, especially when you have been told that she is a very talented, like protege-level witch. However, that's not often what happens. More typically, Elaina sees what's going on, hops on her broom and goes, "Not my problem," and flies off into the distance to the next destination. There's not a lot of resolution to stories in this book. Even if there is partial, it certainly doesn't go all the way. A lot of these stories are left a little bit open-ended. A lot of these stories will leave you kind of thinking, well, what happens next? Or going, well, that's kind of horrible that that's potentially what's going to be keeping going on. And it took me a little while as I got into the book to kind of acclimatize myself to it and to really understand what this book was about. And once I kind of had a bit of a mental shift, I actually found that I really liked the book a lot more. As I said, one of my favorite stories is actually towards the end. Even Elena's backstories are more towards the end. I think in a lot of ways what ended up making me like this book was that most of my enjoyment was towards the end of the book. So when I finished it, I kind of finished it on a high note. Now, I kind of wonder if maybe that is because this began life as a web novel. And of course, if it's a first-time author, which I believe this is, then as they're writing, they're getting more and more into sort of the character, the world, their comfort level, what kind of stories they want to tell. And I think this book kind of shows that and demonstrates that, because definitely I feel that as the book goes along, it becomes better and stronger, and some of the best stories, as I said, are right near the end. I think the people who will enjoy this book the most are people that love world building, are people that when they read fantasy, they are just as interested in the social, cultural activities of the citizens as they are in what's the hero going to do to save the world from the demon lord or what have you. It is one of those books where you have to enjoy the journey and discovering elements of the world just as much, if not more so, than telling the story of how you fix those things or why those things are good, bad, what have you. For the most part, the book doesn't do a lot of really heavy sort of moralizing. It's not even like a fairy tale, a series of fairy tales where there's sort of a moral to the story. Sometimes that does happen, and honestly, when it does, it's a little heavy-handed, and I wouldn't even say that I necessarily enjoyed those stories as much. But overall, like, most of these are just telling us about this world, about what's happening in the world, what kind of people and what kind of quote-unquote countries and villages exist in this world. And Elaina herself doesn't pass much judgments on them in terms of giving commentary or context. She just kind of sees it as it is, says what she thinks about it, and then moves on. And a lot of times she doesn't even say what she necessarily thinks about it. Elena's like a tour guide. She's more of this character that is in this book just to travel from place to place and to experience it, and we're just there to experience it with her. And you can tell from how she leaves a place whether she liked it or whether she didn't like it, but she doesn't give us a lot of commentary in terms of trying to moralize it, trying to explain why she did the things she did or why she left things the way they are. Her pretty much rote thing is just that I'm just a traveler. Like, I'm not here to interfere. I'm not here to mess with the system. Now, sometimes she does get pulled into events. Apparently in this world, witches are a thing and are acknowledged and seem to be relied upon for their abilities and, you know, potentially their ability to judge things. So every once in a while she gets pulled in, but you can tell just how unwilling she is to have that happen. And, you know, even when she does get pulled in, she still is trying to maintain some level of distance. So overall, Wandering Witch is a very different light novel experience. It is not going to be your very typical, every story has like a beginning, middle, end, the heroes accomplish something and everything else. That doesn't happen. Very often there is nothing accomplished. We just see what's going on and that's it. Whether it gets better, worse, or just maintains status quo is completely beyond us because we don't stay around long enough to figure it out. And it is one of those books that I think a lot of people will have less enjoyment of if they really want that kind of a structure. If you're looking for a more structured narrative, even if you like short story type, I mean, let's face it, there's lots of light novels where each chapter is kind of a self-contained story, but there's usually a plot to it. There's usually, like, you know, a goal that gets accomplished. And in this case, that's not really happening. This is like a travel log. We're just kind of seeing the world. We're tourists, and then we're moving on because, after all, tourists aren't the ones who fix their countries. It's the people in them. So we don't even stay long enough to see if those citizens do fix anything. And like I said, it's a very different mindset to approach. And I think when some of the stories are definitely not as strong as others, it could make for a bit of a bumpy ride, depending on you as a reader. As I said, I put myself in, when I switched my mindset and I thought more about how I should approach this book, I found I enjoyed it a lot more. And I was particularly glad that I pushed through because the end stories, I thought, were so much better than some of the ones that I had read in the beginning. So all in all, you know what? This is a cool book. I liked it. It's definitely not for everybody. And definitely you kind of have to have a different mindset going into it if you're going to get, I think, the most enjoyment out of it. So, you know, go into it aware of what you're getting into. And again, if you are a reader that just really wants a strong hero's journey or that kind of stuff, this really might not be the series for you. I don't know if it'll ever kind of move to that kind of thing, but that's definitely not what book one is. In this video, I want to say a special thanks to Renzaz, Drone205, Fixlab.com, and Michaela Werner for their support on Patreon, as well as the support of all of my patrons who allow me to keep doing these videos, getting these books to review, keeping the equipment up to date, and of course, having additional hosting for the Light Novel Podcast so we can spread the love of light novels on as many platforms as possible. For my next review, I'm going to leave sort of the melancholy behind and go with something that's a little funnier and a little sillier and, you know, just good old isekai fantasy fun. And that's going to be volume number 1 of The Dirty Way to Destroy the Goddess's Heroes. That's going to be my next review. In the meantime, thanks for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.